1817, Chapter 2, Robert, the Migration Pattern of Rare Birds. Alexander was waiting for me when I got back, watching the fields and the hills vigilantly. He stuck out more readily than I did, dressed in all black and gray against the rolling green hills. He had his black wide-brimmed hat, looking more serious than father. Why, from this distance, one who didn't know him would have easily mistaken him for a pastor. "I didn't know you liked to walk about so early in the morning, Robert." Color me surprised. Both his eyebrows shot up as he spoke. I wonder if he knew where I went. Before I started sneaking about with Wren, I wasn't a morning person in the slightest. In fact, I naturally reveled in the night. In order to be with Wren at all, I made some serious adjustments. It's a lovely time of day, dear brother. I wouldn't want to miss it. When I am at Lockwood, I must be dragged about by the demands of the schedule. I hardly have time to admire the sunrise or for any other pleasures that life grants us. Hopefully he bought it. He seemed to consider my words carefully. "Please do be careful about running off to town in the middle of the night. I'm not sure where you went exactly, but I can imagine. Be careful who you get involved with." A veiled piece of advice from Alex, too uptight to directly say, "Robert, don't be a degenerate who cohorts with courtesans and gamblers." I'm almost certain he thought that I had gone to one of the gambling parlors in town. I had not, though it amused me that he thought so. At least Wren's secret was still safe, her reputation intact. Did I smell like a gambling hall? Likely I did. The first time I wore this coat, everyone was smoking as if it were their profession, and one of the other boys spilled his absinthe on me. I didn't think it was an accident. This particular classmate never liked me, nor did he like Collin. But Collin pulled me away from our rival. "Pretend it was an accident. Pretend he didn't do it to rile you. The bastard's lucky it didn't stain." Alexander was taking me to Bamburg to socialize. Really meant was that father arranged for us to go to the seaside when his peers were sending their daughters to the same town. The girls' mothers would watch us vigilantly, no doubt. This was father's attempt to bind me into a marriage contract with another wealthy family. He entrusted me to Alexander, as we had no living female relatives to do the traditional matchmaking. My older brother would handle these girls' mothers. Older ladies had always thought him such a gem. If he wasn't careful, he might come back with a bride of his own. I didn't want to go because I knew what father was trying to do. He was doing this because he thought he could temper me. Put into a serious engagement, I would be pressured to behave myself. My future wife's and in-law's reputation would be publicly tied to mine once the engagement was announced. Father thought he was being clever, but he failed due to Alexander's kindness towards me. Alex had told me straight-faced why we were going to Bamburg. Though he often followed father's orders, it was strictly against his nature to lie. The main objective was to see what families were interested in taking me as a future son-in-law. I wouldn't marry the selected girl for some time, whoever she was. I haven't even reached my 17th birthday yet. The men were at least 21 when they married, which was why Alexander would have been a more ready match. Father's sending you because he's trying to get matches for both of us. I had seen it as readily as he refused to. I'm not the concern for this particular trip. He didn't waste time in insisting so. "Alex, you're 27, you have an Oxford law degree, and you're set to inherit everything from father. You are an incredible match. You're the kind of man that these ladies really want. Not me." If father had been honest with his friends, even remotely, they might consider me as undesirable as poor Harold. Through no fault of his own, it had been decided for our brother he couldn't participate in this game of marriage matches. Because father was already down one potential heir, he had to make the best matches for his remaining heirs, Alexander and I. This isn't about me. My flattery embarrassed Alex, so that he quickly turned the subject back to me. "You could try to be less wild. If you kept your unpredictable manner up, no woman is going to want you anywhere near her daughters. You still love Molly Dorset, don't you?" I said knowingly. "I told you that this trip is not for me, but for you," he admonished, then quietly said, "Never mind about Miss Dorset, Robert." I was entirely right then, but Molly wasn't coming back anytime soon. She stopped seeing Alexander about 5 years ago. Her brother and keeper, Mr. Dorset, decided that Harold and I were both wicked creatures whom he never wanted to deal with. Harold did nothing. In fact, it was Mr. Dorset who made Harold cry. So I bit Dorset, You can see why he might think I was evil, but truly, I was defending my brother. I'll tell you this, the nasty man certainly deserved it. Poor Molly was as embarrassed as Alexander that day, both mortified by their unruly brothers. I was merely a boy of 10 during the incident, but I get the feeling that it was one of the events that triggered their eventual drifting apart. Even so, Alex never gave up on Molly. You best ready yourself for the journey, Robert. Go see what Anya has for you in the kitchen, he said, knowing the promise of Anya's cooking would well distract me. Gratefully, I dashed inside to greet Anya and eat breakfast before making my final preparations to leave with Alexander at noon. Bamburg was a picturesque parish town on the Northumberland coast. The fading sun sparkled upon the sea as it sank down into the horizon. The inns were entirely booked out, for many nobles had come to town that week. I recognized all of the ladies and gentlemen there. Father had entertained them at Dove Grove one time or another. In my childhood, I had played in their gardens with their children. Father dragged me to their parties. They smiled at me politely, with interest. Father was admired among his peers. As much as I wanted to run back to Dove Grove and hide there with Anya and Harold, I couldn't. Lords and ladies were giving me such appraising glances, I could nearly read their thoughts. Would he suit my darling daughter? Would he make a noble next lord of the manor? The pressure was mounting, and I didn't much like it. I couldn't even pretend to be interested. Not when my heart was beating so strongly. Wren, Wren, Wren. Keep your high society princesses well away from me. Thank you very much, sirs and madams. My heart was already well spoken for, and I'd honor my lady's wishes to the best of my ability. Nor did I dress the way Alexander told me to. You're wearing as much color as the ladies. Why aren't you more modest? Everyone is staring at you, he had said with some annoyance, though he could hardly be surprised. Every little rebellion I could safely make, I would. My time to do so was growing ever so short, evidenced by the many probing glances I was receiving. I was beginning to understand why Harold didn't like being around large numbers of people. If you were at all different, people were apt to stare. Finally, I caught the gaze of someone with whom I felt supremely comfortable. Collin had told him in a letter that I would be sent to the marriage markets. Like the endlessly devoted friend he was, he dropped everything to save me from this whole embarrassing ordeal. I will be in Bamburg when you get there, Rob. You won't miss me. I rejoiced to read his reassurances. At least if I had to do this, I'd have someone there with me who was entirely on my side. Collin Alvarez Highsmith, cousin to the Spanish ambassador through his mother, was my best friend at Lockwood Academy. His late father had been an English nobleman of similar rank to my father, so he knew well the pains of paternal obsession with marrying one's children up. His sister, only a year older than us, had already been promised to a high-ranking official of the Spanish court. Collin had warned me that he too was going to be married into a powerful Spanish family as well. Fortunately for the time being, he stayed at Lockwood with the rest of us future lords. We could do as we well pleased. I ran up to him and threw my arms around him, overjoyed to see him. Hi, Rob, I missed you too. Goodness, Collin, I can hardly believe that you were able to make it here. I had to bother Ferdinand about it for a fortnight. He finally let me come here. Ferdinand, his older brother, and the current head of his family had a soft spot for Collin and let him do whatever he pleased. Collin had no idea how fortunate he was. We must tangle ourselves up in the affairs of all these families and decide which are the least perilous, I said glumly. You really don't want to get married, do you? He laughed then. It's obviously my father's dream for me, not my own. Don't let any of the ladies know that. You'll become dreadfully unpopular. I feel more false than General Washington's teeth. It can't be that awful, Rob. Look, there are plenty of girls here. They're just as nervous as you are. One of them could be your lady. Give them a chance, eh? No, Collin, you almost sound like Alexander. Besides, my heart already belongs to a young lady, and I want to give her everything. When were you going to tell me this? He fakes being hurt. I just started seeing her since my most recent dismissal from Lockwood. Who is this girl? He'd want to know who had captured my flighty heart this time. Her name is Wren. She is both a Roman goddess and a fairy queen. Collin, if you could see her and talk to her, you'd know it as well as I do. She's absolutely brilliant. Mercy, Robert. Whatever are you doing here if you already have a lover? This wasn't my idea, nor can I marry her now with how things are. In truth, what kept me off the idea of marriage was that if it wasn't with Ren, I didn't want it at all. What am I to take that to mean? Collin looked alarmed. Let's just say she already belongs to another. I gave him a sly wink. Robert, you're having an affair with a married woman. Collin was certainly taken aback. I had managed such a feat. Yes, but she is our age. I didn't want to be married yet. I'm going to help her get out of it. I was assured in this. You're completely mad. I adore you as your best friend, but that's insanity. He shook his head, smiling with disbelief. So might it be, but isn't love insanity? I asked, unable to suppress a grin. You haven't read Byron's newest book, but at least he'd probably agree with you. Collin replied. Alexander would be scandalized if he caught me reading any poetry written during this century. I laughed. Collin laughed with me, though I knew he pitied me, for Ferdinand, not knowing any better, allowed him to read all of the new poets, Byron included. Our teachers at Lockwood forbade nearly all of the current poets, since they considered their work highly corruptive. They believed that reading the new poets would turn us into wild men who gave over to our passion. The celebrated contraband found its way into the school in spite of the rules. To a copy, since I figured your father wouldn't let you have it. Just don't let Alexander see it. Collin knew well that Alex was nearly as bad as father when it came to ruining my fun. You didn't have to, Collin. I was delighted that he had done this for me. Ah, but I did, Rob. If you're going to be a poet, you need to read Byron. Collin rolled his eyes at me. Poor thing can't get a break from his tyrannical family for nothing. He didn't have to say so aloud. I knew Collin better than I knew myself, his nature being fixed like a reliably rooted tree. Mine was ever-changeable, like the unpredictable turning of a wild river. My eyes flitted about the room, surveying the ladies as they walked in. These women were from the south, the wealthiest, most refined women in all of England were said to have been from that great city so far away, London. I had never been. Collin told me it was an experience. How lovely Wren would look, dressed in London's grandest style. I pictured her in a lovely lavender dress, white roses in a crown around her golden hair. She smiled brightly for me. Now she approaches. Ah, but it cannot be so. Collin snaps his fingers. I nearly jump back. There was a girl where I had pictured Wren, but now she looked nothing like her. How could I ever mistake this girl for Wren? She was tall, taller than me even, that were alarmingly blue, nearly a frosty white. Wren's eyes were a dark brown, nearly black, as warm as the summer sun. A blonde, which may have been the only similarity between them. There was nothing in her face that I could recognize as Wren. It scared me. I thought I knew this girl, but she's an entirely different person. Smiled, lacking Wren's mole and charming dimples. I was uninterested. Robert, this lovely creature was trying to strike up a conversation with you, and you go all dreamy on us. Please try and focus. She could be the one. Collin whispered, covering his mouth with his hand so that the girl wouldn't hear him. I was tempted to push him away from me, though Collin was only trying to help. I don't know if he really believed me about Wren. He certainly got over the news quickly. Perhaps he easily recovered, but I don't think I ever would. Excuse me, miss, but I do believe I am unwell. It wasn't a lie. I needed to leave in that moment. It may have seemed rather rude, but it was truly a mercy. If I was seeing Wren where she wasn't, that was a bad sign. I grabbed Collin's sleeve. He bowed to the lady and spirited me back to the room that Alexander and I had rented for the week.